One thing for sure, there are a lot of distractions everywhere, right? And for anybody like me, it's really easy to catch those distractions and run off on the other side. But even with every distraction, we have lessons, we have focus, and just keep moving. I know one spot that's really easy to be distracted is at home. And I got a 2.5-year-old, and Eliana loves to make sure my attention is on her, right? And as a parent, you can't always have your attention on your child. But when I first get home from the day, it's usually one of the first times I've seen her, besides when I got her up in the morning, gave her breakfast. So she's usually like dead on, daddy, 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 daddy. But it's also usually when I'm going, hey, let me fill you in on my day. Or this house, I'm going to try to pick up a little bit before we have dinner. Or I'm going to go to the bathroom and sit on my phone for a few minutes. Right? Like, I'm going to try, like, there's all these other things that I could do right when I get home. And it's usually the time when she especially wants me to focus. And so if I sit down and I'm going to play with her, and I am going to focus and give that time to her, then I have to do it, right? And so we'll be reading or doing something, and I will do something else. I'll get distracted. And before I know it, she will keep trying to get my attention, doing different things. And she'll either do, after a while, she'll either do something she's not supposed to try to get my attention, or she'll come right up to my face, grab me, and look at me, wide-eyed, as if to say, hey! Focus. She doesn't have those words, but that's basically what she's trying to say. And God's doing the same thing, right? He's put different things here on earth for us to do. He's given us a job. He's given us good things. And all around us are all these things that are good, but that take our focus off of Him. That take our focus off of the mission and things that He's told us to do. And so it's so easy for us to get distracted. Get distracted by shopping, get distracted by food, get distracted by jobs, by phones, by sports. You name it, we can get distracted by it, right? Because there's all this stuff around us, and everyone around us is going for completely different things than what we're going for. Our culture has different things they worship and different things that are important. But that's not our number one. It's not the most important if we're following Christ. And so we have to just continue to get refocused. Where are our treasures? What are we running after? What's our number one thing? And so we're going to look at that today. We're going to look at what is our treasure. Where is our treasure at? Is our treasure truly getting put in heaven like we all want and hope? And when we read this passage, we go, yes, that's exactly right. We seek God's kingdom first. We put our treasures in heaven. We don't put our treasures on earth. But are we doing that? What does it look like to not put our treasures here on earth? What does it look like to truly have our treasures in heaven? So hopefully we're going to have some practical steps. Hopefully we're going to look through and we're going to leave going, all right, God's given us something. And I'm just praying that God speaks to us individually and tells us what it is that we are running after, what it is that we are seeking after, rather than His kingdom. So that's my prayer this morning. We wouldn't necessarily get anything out of what I say, but that God would speak individually and place it on your heart. It will probably mean you have to ask the question, God, what am I running after? What am I treasuring? Am I treasuring you in your kingdom, or Am I treasuring the things of this world? That's my prayer this morning, is that God will place it on each heart on what it is that we are truly running after. So Luke 12, I wanted to read out Luke. We did this for youth group on Tuesday. I pulled this text out, and I actually didn't know it was in the set of texts that I picked for youth group this week to look at. And we started reading Luke chapter 12, and we got to this spot, and I was, whoa! Hey, that's what I'm preaching on Sunday, and that's not even the text I was thinking about. So Luke chapter 12 is almost exactly what it says in Matthew 6 on the Sermon on the Mount on placing our treasures in heaven. Except there's a few different things that I hadn't thought about, because I haven't read it in Luke chapter 12 necessarily every time. I usually just go, hey, treasures in heaven, Matthew 6. Sermon on the Mount, let's go. So Luke chapter 12, verses 22 through 34. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? Do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan would run after these such things, and your Father knows what you need. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions, give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Jesus puts it pretty clear, right? Not to worry about all these things, not to get distracted by the building up of possessions, not to get distracted by what will I wear today, all these things will make me look good. All the food that I need, God's going to provide. Where our treasure is, our heart will be. There's a saying that show me your checkbook and your calendar, and I'll show you where your priorities lie. And so today we're going to look at those two areas. We're going to look at our money and our time. Now, as far as money, it's hard to talk about, and it's hard to listen about money. I don't know. It's something that becomes close to our heart, something we have to get, we have to have to survive. And sometimes we just don't want to hear about it. There's also the thought that the church just always talks about money because we need it, right? And so there's that thought out there. But that's not why we're going to bring that up today. It's not why we're even looking at it. It's because God talks about money a ton in the Bible. Right? And it's something that we can so easily get ensnared by, so easily focus on, is this little piece of paper, or today, mostly a card, that buys the things that we need to survive. Now, money is not bad. Money is not evil. Money, like I said, is a piece of paper, a card, this idea that we can use it and give it in order to get the things that we need to be able to survive, to be able to buy the things in our culture. All money can do, money can't do anything on its own. It can only do what we tell it to do. Money is not the root of all evil, but the love of money. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." And so we have to watch that our love of money, right? We have to watch that money is not controlling us and that our love for it is making us lose pursuit of God. Matthew 6 puts out pretty plain in there. It's on there. Matthew 6:24 says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." So we have to choose who we're going to serve. We have to choose that we are going to serve God and we're going to love God with all that we are. Right? The first commandment, love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. So to love God and not love money. Found a quote from tithe.ly, and it says, "We either worship God, we either worship our wealth, or worship God with our wealth." We either worship our wealth, or worship God with our wealth. So how do we worship God with our wealth? First of all, we know where it's going. Right? We need to be able to manage our money and know where it's spent. So is it spent on the frivolous things, or is it spent wisely? This is something that we've been trying to do for the last couple of years. Andrea is fantastic about setting up our app to be able to budget every month, gets it all up and ready, but I am horrible at using it. Right, I am horrible at taking the receipt, taking a picture, and putting it into the app that says what I spent on. Mostly because, hey, in this whole grocery order, I also bought 2 chocolate bars and a Mountain Dew, and I don't want that seen, so I'm just going to put that receipt into my wallet, and it's never going to be known about, right? Or, oh, hey, yeah, I got gas today, and I lost that receipt. I should have just put that right in there, right? But if we don't know where each penny is spent, we don't know all these other things that we spend on, because, hey, it's really easy to just stick the card into the ATM or into the little card reader, spend the money, and keep going and not really think about all the things we spend on in a month, except for at the end of the month going, hey, there's no more money, and where's the paycheck? So what are we spending our money on? We have to budget and know what that is. Are we wasting it? Are we spending it all on what we need today, tomorrow, the next day? Are we spending on things we don't need that just hoard in our house year after year after year after year? So know where it's going. Second, are we giving? Are we giving of our money? Are we loose with it to be able to give to those in need? To be able to give back to God as He's given to us. God provides it for us. So one mark on if money has our whole heart is if we're going, I can't give. I don't know where the next money check's coming. I don't know. I've got this here. I need this for the next 3 months, and I can't. If we live. So, do we have a giving heart? Will we give to those in need and love our neighbor with our money? Are we worshiping God with our money, or are we worshiping our money? A check to know which one is to look at greed, is to check our heart, to be careful and guard it. We need to watch for greed and lust and covetousness. These 3 things will help us know where money is in our heart. So Ty Lee also said this to say. Said greed is bad. It's something all of us have to fight in our life. In the words of the Apostle Paul, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. There's a good chance you probably don't think you have a greed problem. Let's ask these questions. Are you satisfied with how much money you make? Do you want to purchase more things? Does your desire for money and possessions choke out your interest in God? To seek contentment. It says, it is difficult to be content with yourself, with your work, with your family, and with your possessions. We are bombarded with a slew of messages and images everywhere we go that entice us to pursue something better. From wanting a new car, getting a bigger house, or coveting a promotion at work. The world we live in compels us to be dissatisfied with who we are and what we have. Now, contentment is more than just being happy with who we are and what you have. Contentment is rooted in God's love for you. It's learning to be satisfied wholly in Christ, regardless if you have a little or a lot of money. So as we're trying to figure out where our heart is, it's looking for those things. Are we having a little bit of greedy problems? Are we coveting the things that we don't have? Are we lusting after this other stuff? Can we be content? I mean, our culture is always telling us we don't have enough. We need more and more and more and more. So it's really hard to be content and put our treasures where God tells us. When everyone around us is saying, hey, you need this, and you need that, and you need this. So where is our treasure? Does our money and our thoughts on money show that our treasures are here? That everything is about the earthly, the stuff that's going to disappear? Right? We are here for a short time. And our stuff is just going to go to dust. Either that or get broken by the great-grandchildren that have it, right? That they'll keep it and keep it and keep it until it breaks. That's what it's going to do at some point. So I saw this thing on Facebook, I think it was yesterday. Somebody was looking for ideas on how to repair a plate that had been brought down from, I think it used to be their great-great-grandmother's. And it got broken by their child. Right? And so they're like, how do I fix this? Is there any way that I can fix this? Or am I just going to have to put it in the box and put it in the cupboard and keep it? Quite literally, that's what they were asking. Should I just put it in the box and keep it? Because it used to be the great-great-grandmother that had been passed down. And so we all have those things, right? We have these things that we do pass down. We have these things that we're our parents or we're our grandparents. And we have these things that, like, we may, try to get more of, and I'm collecting. We may have these little collections. I'm not actually trying to look at you, Vince. I promise. Right? We all have those little things. But do our collections hold our heart? Or do we allow God to have it? All right, so the second spot I want to focus on is our time. Ecclesiastes tells us that our life is a vapor. We spend very little time. It's like a mist that is here and is gone. So where is our time spent? Is our time spent all the distractions and going from here to there, going to that game and this game and going to all the different stuff? Is it completely focused on our 5 jobs and our hobby job and this stuff? Are we focused on the calling that God has put on our lives? So, God has put different things He's called us to. One of those we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks is our marriage. God has called us to our marriage and called us to put time with our spouse, to build our spouse up and to build in each other's lives. We have to make time for that. Right? So we're not just living in the same house, never talking, never seeing each other, and not putting any time into anything. We have to spend time pouring into our spouse, making sure that our spouse is focusing on God, making sure that our spouse is loving God with all of their heart, soul, mind, and strength, asking the hard questions. Those all take time. Second calling God's put on our lives, if we have children, God has called us to model for them, to be able to mold our lives so that we can mold their lives, to lead them to Jesus and love them, which means taking them to their things, but not making everything about what they necessarily want to do. It is so easy for us to focus on our kids and make our kids our treasure, to idolize them and put them so far up and to have every ounce of our being about our children, going where they want to go, doing what they want to do, taking them to every single sports thing they ever want to do. But what is that teaching them about their time for God? Is that helping them learn that God has something on their life? Or is that teaching them to completely focus on the worldly things of today that are gone tomorrow? To love our children well and to be able to mold them for who God wants them to become. God has called us to work. Work is a godly command and something we all have to do. But where is our focus and our heart when it comes to our jobs? Do we put more time into it than what is needed? Are we ever at home? Or are we even at our jobs when we're at home? Our job isn't our identity. So, Those are different things that God has called us to. And another that God has called us to is to make disciples. God's called us to relationships, and we have to ask, are we available? Are we available to build relationships, to make disciples at work, at the store, at all these different places? I mean, we don't have to add it as a full new thing, but it's as you go. As you go, make disciples. So when we're going to all those things that we're already doing, when we're going to the baseball games, when we're going to the basketball games, when we're going to the store, when we're going to the bank, when we're going to a job, going to our work, to focus on the people that God has put in our lives. To be available for what God has for us and the people that He has for us to plug into and work with. So we as a church belong to the Ignite Network, which is the missionary church's discipleship outlet. It's where we've been learning to kind of a little bit more on how to make disciples. The guy who started it, Dan Grider, has a saying, it's everywhere, it's in like half of his books. But in the podcast and everything, that we make disciples where we live, work, and play. And that just continued as I was looking at this and looking at our time and being available, that it's where we live, work, and play. So at all those different spots, are we available to do what God has called us to do? Are we available to love others? When it comes to where's our treasure, we can really sum it up in the two commands that Jesus gave, that Jesus said were the most important. Right? To love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And to love our neighbor as ourselves. So these two things, when we look at, are we loving God with our money? Are we loving God with our time? Are we loving God with our whole being, everything that we are? And do we love our neighbor? Do we truly love our neighbor? I think so often we think about our neighbor as everyone that we come in contact with. But do you also love your neighbor who's in proximity to you? Do you love the neighbor that is in the house right next door? Or across the street? Or 2 doors down? Do we know them? I know we don't yet. I think we've met one of our neighbors so far. But nobody's coming outside. It's kind of cold. Right? But yeah, I know. We're trying not to be like we were in Nebraska. I mean, in the city, you don't get to know your neighbors. You start talking to your neighbor, they look at you like you're crazy. It's really true. So we're trying not to take that city mindset here. We want to get to know the people that God has put around us. And so do we love those people that are right next door? Are we paying attention and available enough to know when we need to love somebody? When somebody's having a bad day, when somebody's doing great, when somebody just needs us to say, hi, how you doing? This earth will pass. Everything in it is going to decay and be destroyed. And so are we treasuring the people that God has put in our lives? Are we doing the work that He's asked us to do? Or are we building all of our treasures here on earth? I'd like to ask the worship team to come back up. I just want to sing a couple more times of that chorus of You Can Have It All. You know, and as we are singing it, I want us just to think about that. You know, are we giving it all to God? Does God truly have our whole heart, our whole lives, and everything in it? or is there parts of our lives that we are holding back? So those who've joined us on Facebook, thank you. And we will see you guys next week. Hopefully you'll sign back in and watch us next week when, Pastor Johnny's back and you don't have me. So, so we will see you later. And everyone here, if you just...